Listen, ladies, we have a lot of challenges just because we are women. There's been a lot that goes on in our lives. And I was thinking, I thought this was significant. In 1848, think about this, how long ago this was. In 1848, women got together. They were Christian women. They were very conservative in their thought. But they got together not far from here in Seneca Falls. And the reason they got together was because there was going to be the very first women's right convention in that area in 1848. They drafted what became known as the Declaration of Sentiments because they felt that things were not fair. They weren't treated equally in the law. They weren't treated equally where employment was concerned. And they weren't given a voice where matters of this country were concerned. That was in 1848, ladies, so long ago. By the way, it took so many years before that declaration of sentiment, before that desire to have the right to vote actually took place. 30 years after that, there was a Republican senator, I think his name was Sargent, and he actually introduced this amendment to Congress. And it was years before it was ratified. And now we have the right to vote, and that's been 100 years now next year. And I bring this up not because, not because I'm a feminist or I'm like, yeah, women's rights, but it is right that we had a voice because we have a concern. And as Kimberly was saying earlier, we are we are the mother of this country. We are the mothers of this country. And as women, we have a stake in what happens to this country. And I think it's significant that those women that fought for our right, the right that we just take for granted today, 100 years later, those women were influenced greatly by the Second Great Awakening. Did you know that? The Second Great Awakening influenced them because one of the top reforms that was part of the Second Great Awakening had everything to do with the abolition of slavery. And they were working hard on that here, these ladies in New York. You have a heritage here in New York. You have a history. They were working to abolish slavery in the entire country. And as they were working on that, it occurred to them, wait a minute, we do believe that no matter what your color of skin is, that you have equal rights with anyone else. But then they realized, wait a minute, so do women. We have the same rights as anyone else. And that is why they pushed for the right to vote. And I think it's significant that they were so influenced by a spiritual awakening. Because when I think about it, this whole country is what it is today. In many ways, we're hanging on by a thread, this republic. It is what it is today because of the First Great Awakening in this country. That Great Awakening influenced greatly our founding fathers. The pulpits. We have a pastor here today and his wife that spoke earlier. Oh, how lovely you are, Carla. How absolutely lovely. The pastors would be preaching in the churches right before the Revolutionary War, and then when they were done, they were making a plea to fight the Revolutionary War. When they were done, they would rip open their robes, and there was the uniform. Am I right? Because they knew, because it was still so fresh in their minds, what it was like to live under tyrannical rule. They knew, it was still fresh in their minds, what it was like not to be able to worship in the way that they saw fit to worship. They came here for freedom. It was for liberty that they came here. And for liberty that they fought, not just for themselves, because guess what? A lot of those people that fought for that liberty either died in the war or had terrible things happen to them afterwards because they supported the Revolutionary War and because they signed the Declaration of Independence. Independence from a government that was too imposing and oppressive. That's what they fought for. And I was thinking, in 1787, at the State House in Philadelphia, 55 delegates met for 4 months. Now, this is 11 years after our Declaration of Independence was signed. 55 delegates, 4 months they had to spend in Philadelphia. That is hell for anybody. I don't know if anybody's been to Philadelphia, but 4 months in Philadelphia, my goodness. And they were deliberating. And it was a big deal. It was a really big deal. Think about what might have been going on in the streets. And I know this was going on in the square because we find out later that a woman was so anxious to find out the results of those deliberations, grabbed Benjamin Franklin as soon as he left that final day of deliberation. When our Constitution had been finally ratified, she grabs him. There's a woman waiting for him and wants to know, Doctor, what have we got? A monarchy or a republic? They were worried. There were other people. It wasn't just the woman waiting there. There had to be a lot of people anxious those 4 months to find out what their future was going to be. Was it going to be under oppressive government again, or was it going to be freedom and liberty? Liberty. And he said, a republic, if you can keep it. Ladies, that is the question today. We have a republic. It's holding on by a thread, but we still have it. But we must keep it. You know, I talked about the Declaration of Independence, 1776. Those guys are meeting, right? And they're deliberating over whether or not they are going to finally declare independence, those 13 colonies, from the Queen, from the King, from anyone else who wanted to rule over them. Now, everybody in the room at that time knew that this was something that needed to be done. They agreed on that. What they couldn't agree on was the timing. So finally, John Witherspoon from New Jersey stood up. He, great spiritual man. He stood up and he made a plea. And then part of that he said, there is a tide in the affairs of men. We perceive it now before us. If we hesitate, we are then consenting to our own slavery. And once he said that, everybody in the room signed the Declaration of Independence, and 13 colonies became the new nation of the United States of America. These men, these articulate men, because they drafted this declaration, this amazing document, these spiritual men, because they understood that our rights, our freedoms came from God and God alone. Do you know what they did after they signed that Declaration of Independence? We're told by historians that many of them wept openly. Wept. Not a few tears, they wept. And a lot of them got on their knees and prayed. Because they understood that what they did was so radical. What they did was so inspired by God. And what they did could have put a price on their head. They wept and they prayed. We owe it to those founding fathers. We owe it to our suffrage sisters to be the woman that God has made us to be. And if we don't know what that is, he'll tell us if you ask him. We owe it to them. Because you know what? They did it for people they were never going to meet. They didn't know you or me. And they didn't care that they wouldn't know. And they never fully experienced the freedom that we have experienced. But they did it for you, for a generation of people they would never know. Now I ask you, ladies, can we not do the same for a generation of people that we will never know? There is a reason that the women felt fit to make that declaration of sentiments. There is a reason that they held strong for over 100 years to make it so that we could vote and have a voice. There was a time in this country that candidates would shy away or run away from the label socialist. Even though they were socialists, they knew they needed to hide it. Today, candidates are embracing that label. Our future could be changed by just one election. Just one election. And it is up to us to make sure that that future doesn't change. That those that come after us will say of us, as Ronald Reagan said, that we fought the good fight, that we kept them free. Ladies, will you join me and fight the good fight and keep them free?